Yeah, it's called Conversations with Jeff, not Screaming Matches.
Yeah, you and I do not agree on Calvinism. But look how nice we are to each other.
I think it's going to really shock a lot of people, thrill a lot of people. A lot of people are going to have to do some soul searching.
It's like, you know what? What are you doing? You're spending all your time trying to destroy another Christian day because you don't understand what's going on, when you should be out there winning people for Jesus.
Right.
Thank you for the job you're doing. Thanks for being willing to address these kind of issues. They're vital to the church.
I feel sorry for what's coming your way, but God bless you, man. It's a good, healthy conversation, and let's keep growing together in the Lord.
People won't change unless they hear the truth, though. And so we need to know the truth, speak the truth, and then the last one I would say is that we need to stay in the truth, no matter what the consequences are.
Okay, everybody, welcome to today's episode of Conversations with Jeff. Really excited about today's show and that sort of thing. Before we get started, just wanted to give a big thank you to everybody who did tune in for the Saving America conference that we put on over this weekend. It was a great lineup of people, had a lot of really good speakers, especially just dealing with conservatism and Christianity and how all that plays out with dealing with the Constitution, a lot of things that we're seeing going on today. So thanks for everybody tuning in to that on Saturday. We're going to be doing another version of that conference coming up on Saturday, May 9th. For more information, you guys can go to AmericanConservativeMovement.com and check that out. I'm really excited about today's guest with Conversations. As you guys all know, we've been pretty much putting out a new episode of Conversations with Jeff every single day. Today's guest, we have Dennis Agajanian. Really excited to bring him on. I grew up, seeing him perform. He's a Christian musician, and he's toured around the world, performed all over the place, including at Billy Graham Crusades and Harvest Crusades and all that kind of stuff. But Dennis, I'm glad we could sit down and glad we could do this.
Well, it's an honor to be here, Jeff. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. But yeah, thanks again. I really appreciate this. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
Well, it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, definitely. And so one of the things that I like to do, anytime I have a guest on for the first time, is kind of give the audience a chance to get to know you a little bit and, hear your testimony, how God saved you, that sort of thing. Would love to start out the show with that.
I was 11 years old and had gone to church all my life with my parents, and I was invited to a Wednesday night on a it was a January cold night, raining and foggy, and so I went to this old church, and there was one room with a light going on in it, and that was the room I was going to go to with three other friends, and they were in the front row and I was in the second row, and we sat there looking at the light bulb, but cold and kind of smelling the wood, and inside these old pews, we're sitting on him. And this guy walks out with a suit that was, twice too big for him. And he preached a message. There was no music. There was no videos. There was no anything, And I listened and sitting in the second row. And then he said, anybody here want to accept Christ? Raise your hand. I raised my hand. He made me stand up and said, stand up, kind of like a drill sergeant. You sure you know what you're doing? It's the first time I ever talked back to an adult. I said, you bet I know what I'm doing. I wouldn't be standing, So I was nervous, and I said the prayer with him and went home and told my mom, and never forget it. I found out, I thought, who is that masked man? I contacted the pastor like a year later, and he told me his name was Larry Ward. Well, I looked him up several years ago and found out that Larry Ward started World Hunger, and so I called his office, and he said, the secretary said, who's calling? I said, this is Dennis Agajanian. I'm calling for Dr. Ward. This is really Dennis, and I said, I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about him. He led me to Christ, and so I got him on the phone, and it was really a monumental time talking to him, and that he led me to Christ. He sent me some books, and 6 months later he passed away. I believe his wife did too. Mm-hmm. It was really neat being able to talk to the gentleman that led me to Christ. Small little church, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's really cool that you did get the chance to talk to him and that sort of thing, and kind of reconnect there as well. And then obviously you've been a musician, you've toured all over the place, you performed all over the place. What started your path and your journey into going down this route of music?
I was doing bluegrass music. I started playing guitar at 15 years old. So I was a sophomore in high school, and we needed a guitar player. My brother played the mandolin and the fiddle, and then we had a banjo player, and so I learned guitar. I've been playing trumpet since I was 9, so that's where it was my main instrument. And so just playing guitar and doing all the background stuff. Not a lot of thrill. You just do background like this. That's all you do, You're doing your right arm.
Right.
Solo instruments. So back then, guitars weren't the solo instruments. So Clarence White came around, and people like that I got to know.
Yeah. Now, one of the other cool things is that you are a world record holder with being the fastest flat picker. For people who maybe aren't as familiar with maybe like guitar techniques and things like that, what does that actually mean?
Well, Johnny Cash started that rumor. I played for him backstage in his dressing room, and I played for him several times. We've been friends, and so then it got out that it was an Guinness thing, and then it wasn't because they wanted to do it on the computer, and I've never sat down to do it. I don't want to be a fast player. I want to be a good player, and I'm still trying to learn. But to be able to pick fast is not just drum fast like this, but to pick individual strings like. Or you can do it fast. So they said that, but there's a lot of great players out there, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. I'm getting older, and so I don't know if they're fast. No. I'd play with anybody if they're fast. I don't care. I just want to be a good player more than a rapid guitar player.
Yeah, exactly. Now, dealing with because obviously you're a Christian, and dealing with Christian music, and you're performing at thirches and that sort of thing. So, what made you decide to go down the route of going down the Christian route, and because I know you've done a lot of hymns, and you've done a lot of things kind of going down that route. What led you going down that way instead of maybe going the secular side of things?
Being a Christian at home when I was young, I went to college and was rooming with some guys in Long Beach, and I was going to Long Beach State and Long Beach City College, and they invited me to Campus Crusade for Christ to go to a leadership training institute for a week, and it was a rewarding time. It was over Easter, and it was like a 10-day deal, and of course people have guitars, but I played in the lobby there and got a crowd every night. We'd have 300 people jam packed in the lobby, and I was playing, and pretty soon I was invited to churches, and I always wanted to do the music that I do, if it's bluegrass or country rock, but do it with substance, having lyrics that can move people. I always wanted to appeal to kind of the blue collar guy. Come to the rock, you don't have to get stoned anymore. Kind of songs that are the good news is Jesus, the bad news is no, that's a song my brother wrote. I don't do that in many churches, but I kind of like that style of playing. And that's what I do. And then I play classical too, because you have people in the church that like classical music, and so they see a person like me playing classical, they're going, I don't get it, So it's kind of neat to be able to not be apologetic, but play Mozart and learn some hard songs, learn the Hallelujah Chorus by Handel and different songs like that. Jesus, Joy of Men's Desiring by Bach, and and then playing it on the guitar during an offering or during, an interlude or something. And so it's fun to do different styles of songs. You don't want to get bored with one style.
Right.
And some of these artists, they play the same style, and they've got to be bored of it,
Yeah. Well, see, like that's one of the things I always hear about, like, musicians and bands and things like that, is they tour, and especially a lot of these bands, they've been touring for 30, 40, 50 years even sometimes. And it just seems like you always hear that they get sick of always playing their hit song for the encore, because it's like that's the one they've been playing for 40 years, but it's the song that everybody's showing up to hear. So like I totally kind of get what you're saying there, of it's kind of nice to mix things up a little bit too.
It sure is. It's fun to do that and to mix it up and to play songs that are difficult to play, to work on some Mozart and I'm thinking to myself while I'm rehearsing, I just can't do this. How did they, and then you do it and do it and do it. Pretty soon you're doing it,
Yeah.
Especially if you do it in front of people, you open up more brain cells. You can't make a mistake because everybody's looking at you, so you better do it and do it right. So.
Yeah. Now, like, you're saying like you'll play classical music and things like that. Would you mind playing something really quick? Because I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, like here's bluegrass, here's country rock, but then we're getting into, like, you're transitioning over to playing like classical music. Very cool. Yeah.
Run together.
Yeah. Well, like, so, like, are you, like, when you're learning songs like that, are you like reading the sheet music and then figuring out, or are you just doing it by ear and figuring out how to do it yourself?
I listen to it on my cell phone, my iPhone, and I'll listen to it several times, and so then I sit down and play it.
Yeah.
I could transfer what I'm hearing in notes to put it on the guitar.
Yeah.
That's kind of hard to do, but it's a gift I think the Lord gave me that I can do.
Yeah.
I can hear something and I hear it and then I hear it again. I hear the variations and the chord progressions and what triads are using, then I grab the guitar and then do it.
Yeah.
It's almost like you get that in a bluegrass band if a guy's taking a banjo break, and so you're going to take a break similar to that maybe, or different. You're going to follow the chord lines, and so that's pretty much what I do.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Well, you did Jesus, Joy of Man's Desire, and you missed two notes. Well, okay, all the other ones are right. Or they come up and they go, it's not Jesus, Joy of Man's Desire, it's Jesus, Joy of Man's Desire.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have fun with it. But.
Good. Yeah, so, and that's it's always fun to hear, like, a different variation of some of those songs as well, especially playing it on the guitar. It's something oftentimes you don't hear, or if you do hear somebody playing one of those songs, it's typically like a very traditional, like, classical, like, guitarist and things like that. But then it's cool to be able to hear the different genres of that.
It's written and I'm going, no, that could bore me. Yeah,
yeah.
Because there's a part of a classical movement that's great, and maybe it's 2 minutes long, but the rest, the 45 minutes, is completely boring, and I don't want to do that. Why would I want to? Boring. That's not our job. Our job is to get their attention so we can present the gospel.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's really what I do with the guitar. I'll play something and to try to get their attention so they respect what I have to say. If I'm talking to Eskimo kids up in Alaska in a village, you try to do something. They really like blues and they like Johnny Cash. Kids do everywhere in Alaska, and so you do some blues, you do some Cash, and then they listen to you. and you share the gospel and they come to know Christ, it's worth it all.
Right.
Here's that talent, that gift to get the attention of the people.
Yeah, which I think kind of also leads into, like you've performed at like Billy Graham Crusades, and I know like Harvest Crusades and things like that. What got you down that route of being able to link up with like Billy Graham and actually using your talent with music and then being able to facilitate that along with the gospel?
When Campus Crusade for Christ went to Berkeley to minister the gospel to him, and I met him outside. I was witnessing to some Hell's Angels, and they were looking over my shoulder, and Mr. Graham is standing there, and I turned to him because he was going to speak the next day. And, "Sir, would you like to continue?" He said, "You're doing just fine." Well, the people heard me like maybe 12 years later, and they invited me to a crusade, and that's where I met Franklin. I was in Lubbock, Texas, and I've done 45 of his crusades. And then I've done about 300 of Franklin's, wherever he's spoken. We've always been, and so it's amazing to be able to be invited to do a festival. I call several artists friends of mine that we had Jeremy Camp and different people, and said, "Isn't it nice? You walk on stage and your name is on tape. And that's where your box is, and that's where your plug-in is, and that's where your sound check goes." And I mean, it's just a real honor here to be with somebody like Billy Graham all those years. It's just never gotten old. You have to pinch yourself and say, the Lord takes me home.
Yeah,
I've done it all. What more would you want to do in Christian music?
Yeah,
than the Billy Graham Festival or Franklin Graham Festival.
Right. Now, do you have any like stories or experiences that you had, being at some of those like festivals where, because I feel like it's one of those things where, obviously they've got a bunch of people there in an arena or a stadium or something like that. But again, like the focus becomes like it is all about the gospel, and it's about, bringing people to Christ and things like that. What was your experience from like that side of things, being a part of something like that?
Well, there may be certain bands that'll play, and if Mr. Graham didn't like it, he never cut him or anything, but he would kind of do this with his finger and come here, And what are you doing? "I'm playing this." "Well, you play 3. "Okay, well, they asked me to play 2. You play 3 or 4. Things get changed like that. He wants the gospel. He wants the people, ready to hear the gospel. And he wants them not applauding for me, but applauding for the Lord. There's some people that'll get up there and they get the applause, but he wants the applause going to the Lord and for me to be a part of that. And it is just every time, it's an absolute incredible experience to go different places, especially Decision America, to go to cities that would not want Christianity there. And yet people still showed up. And even if the gays came in and protested, they were silent and they were polite and they had their signs, but they didn't disrupt the meeting. They didn't get up and yell and scream. They were there, and if it rained, we gave them umbrellas and they thanked us. And if it was too hot, we gave them bottles of water. And I remember this one girl holding the rainbow flag, and "I just love your guitar playing." And I hugged her. "Thank you very much." She was so sweet. But it's all about Christ, that he's not a religion, he's a relationship. And, he came into the world to save sinners, not to condemn the world, but the world through him might be saved. And so we're able to try to, minister to as many as we can.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of those things too, is like, obviously like the Bible teaches us that the gospel is divisive, because, it's dealing with right and wrong. It's dealing with heaven and hell and whether you accept Christ or not and things like that. But I think one of the really cool things about music too is it does have this ability to unite across a lot of different either denominations or divides and things like that. And so like you were saying, like even somebody who's there protesting maybe your message, they're still like, "Oh, that guy's a really good music player. Maybe I need to take a listen to what he's saying." Yeah,
and then they're appreciative. Especially when it's raining, you give them all umbrellas. Or it's hot, you give them things. It's neat.
Yeah.
It's a neat.
Yeah, that's really cool. Now, you know, because I mean, you're still like, you know, performing quite often, and you're still, I mean, you've been performing for a many number of years. But the cool thing that I saw like on your website is like you've said like you're willing to go play pretty much like anywhere, like, you know, you're at big churches, small churches, festivals, you know, that sort of thing. Which I think is kind of refreshing when, you know, there's a lot of people that's like, no, we just gotta, you know, we'll only go to the big venues or like the big mega churches and things like that. What made you kind of decide to go down that route?
You know, it's just an honor to be able, with this COVID virus, it's the first time I haven't played for 2 weekends in a row since I played guitar, really, started the ministry. And you just think that there are people too. If I'm on, I guess when I'm on tour and I go to a church on the Oregon coast, right, and it's cold, you go to this place and it's jam-packed. I've never been there before, you know, or I'm in Maine or Massachusetts or Wisconsin, and you see the people that have come to see you. I'll play for anybody. It doesn't matter. It can be a large church. And what I try to do is to be very reasonable with the churches. I don't have an agent. I don't throw a fee out there that they can't cover. If they can't cover it, then we'll work something out, you know, or we'll do an offering, or we'll do, you know, we don't make a big deal about finances. The Billy Graham Association never did that. And Billy always said, if you have to make a big deal about it, then maybe you ought to close your doors. And so, you know, you just trust the Lord, and if it's Greg Laurie's church or Skip Heitzig's church or Jack Graham's church in Dallas, or the church I'm going to be doing is North County Baptist up here. You know, they'll have they seat about maybe 200 people, but there won't be that many there because there'll be about 10 people there, and they'll live stream it. So, you know, I'm not going to turn somebody down that wants to hear you. You know, that would be arrogant to me.
Yeah.
So we go on record to try to give them as much as we can in our talent artistically, and then try to be reasonable with them. Well, we want to give you this. Well, thank you very much. You know.
Yeah. Now, you know, like one of the things that, you know, I kind of want to ask you as well is, you know, I feel like there's been a lot of criticism of like Christian music today in general, and just kind of it's become a lot more like business focused and business minded, and, you know, I mean, granted, to a certain degree, it is a business and that sort of thing. But what are some of the changes that like you feel like you've seen within the Christian music industry, you know, if we'll call it that, you know, either you like and you think are great, or maybe you're like, oh, I wish it wasn't going down this route?
What you said, I wish it wasn't going down that route. There's some music that you hear, and they justify it by saying he loves me, or he's my friend, or something like that, and then they go crazy with their music, and there's no substance to it. It's just another song, you know. Or for somebody to be a writer, that could be dangerous, because they write and they only sing their own songs, unless they're, you know, Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan, maybe 80% of the songs would be a bore, maybe, but there's some that he really has written that are great, or Neil Young and people in the secular market. But within Christian music, you know, if they don't have a heart for evangelism, like some of the great artists that have had, then I don't get very moved to want to purchase a CD or even listen. I think that some people have visions of grandeur. They think that they're living in the secular world out there playing rock and roll music, and they're a star when they see the lights and they see everything and all the stage stuff, you know, which a lot of it's kind of cool, you know, the fog stuff and all that could be nice, and the lights, but some people look at it as, here I am, and that's the only crowd they're going to play for, really, that's that large. And you just, they need to know that the Lord will keep them around if they're faithful. And most artists last 5 years, you know, or 7 years, and you don't hear about them anymore. And I think if they're faithful and available and teachable, and they're serious about their music, and they're serious about not getting up there and clowning around or talking too much. Usually they have pastors that talk. People don't need to talk so long, between songs, and play songs that have meaning and substance.
Yeah. Now, what have been some of your like biggest influences, like musically speaking? Like, so like when you're looking at your style or your genre or what you like, what were some of your big influences?
Well, in the secular market, it would be because that's the music you listen to. A lot of the songs that I would hear that were gospel songs. I like the Rambos. I like, different people groups that had great harmony. Second chapter of Acts, I like them because of their harmonies, kind of like Crosby, Stills, and Nash. The influence of them and playing guitar, and from Waylon Jennings to really great guitar players. Glenn Campbell was a phenomenal guitar player, and I just had Doyle Dykes write me and tell me what a great guitar player I am, and I wrote him back and I said, you're not, you aren't losing your hearing, are you? I mean, come on. And I got to pinch myself, but I see guys like Doyle Dykes. He's just a phenomenal, humble player, and he's good, and so I get moved by people that are salty and get up. Larry Norman was a good friend of mine years ago, and he was a big influence. I opened up for him for a lot of performances, and we traveled quite a lot. And he was a good, dear friend. I guess he was a mentor to me in many ways. And he was kind of a bizarre guy, I was playing at Hollywood Presbyterian Church this Saturday night, and there was about 3,000 people there, and I'm playing before him. And he walked on the platform. In the middle of the song, he grabbed my mic and he said, "Sound man, turn his guitar up." I mean, that's how it was. And I stopped, and I'd look and smile, and then I would, "Is this okay, Larry?" and play, And there was just some great artists that, like Larry, that I liked it. And, I felt like I was in their family. I never thought that much that I was, but you get around them at a convention and you feel like they're family to you. Still, so
right now, what are some like musicians or bands or whatever it is that you like today that you wish more people were either listening to or that you feel like, okay, they're doing it right, today?
More than bands, because bands are almost like some worship groups when you have a 20-year-old person playing guitar and all he's doing is 3 chords in a minor and he's strumming like this. Rather than you're challenging him to be really phenomenal. I'm moved by groups like Nickel Creek, that is a secular group. To my understanding, they're believers, but they're really expert players. Chris Thiele on the mandolin is a genius musician, one of the greatest musicians I've ever heard. And Sean Watkins playing guitar is a phenomenal guitar player. He used to come up to me and ask me about my playing when he was a young man, and now he's just phenomenal. And Sarah, his sister, is just a great violin player, fiddle player. I get moved by that. There's a young man in Sacramento. He's going to turn 18 next week. That when he was 11 years old, I remember playing for him at a camp, and I gave him a lesson. Well, since then, he's become one of the phenomenal top acoustic guitar players I've heard. I think he could do about anything anybody does. And he's probably one of the best electric guitar players. And so to mentor somebody like that, to see them maybe coming up with the heart of Christ, that moves me. Sometimes a big, huge band will just be another band. Because on most worship songs that they have bands, you don't see a guitar player taking a solo break. You don't see a piano player taking a solo break. They're just kind of playing and they're stifled and they're not going to be creating more, It's not like songs that, for 1,000 tongues that sing my great Redeemer praise. Songs that have incredible movements that are difficult to play. They're songs that are just 2-3 chords. So that's a little discouraging.
Yeah. Well, so I was a worship leader at a church when I lived out in Arizona. I play music. I mean, obviously not nearly as good as on the guitar as you. But one of the things that I've noticed about like worship music in general is, like you were saying, it's the simplicity of the chords, and it's almost like they're trying to simplify things so much that it just makes it so easy for the audience. But to the point to where it's just like it's almost like a pop song, you know what I mean? And it's one of those things, like when you're talking about like let's say doing like a guitar solo or a piano solo, I feel like a lot of churches will say let's not do that because that's too showy, or we just keep it simple and play the chords and that sort of thing. What's your take on like doing like, let's say, a musical riff or a solo or something like that?
Well, there's a church here in San Diego in La Mesa. It's called Journey. Every time I'm there, they have an incredible worship team with incredible musicians, where they take solo breaks, And Greg Laurie and his church, Harvest Christian Fellowship, he has like 3 or 4 different major worship bands that they're very, very good players. And when I get with some of these guys, they really like it. We were just in Las Vegas at a place, and all these guys are Vegas musicians, And so we're doing this difficult stuff, and they're playing it right with me, because I've sent them a tape of it. And so that's been fun, to encourage a worship team. I mean, they're volunteers, and they want to do good, and they want to have good harmonies. And Joe Weldon is a friend of mine who used to work with me. He goes and he does these seminars at some of these churches and pulls this harmony person here, this person to do that. And that's stuff that I've done too myself, but to encourage him, and encourage him to, here, we're going to do this on the guitar this time. Now we're going to try this, and, it opens brain cells for people, and they get playing, and they're challenged.
Yeah. Well, and I was at a worship leaders conference, and I remember, I think it was Lincoln Brewster was there, and he was talking. I was in one of the breakout sessions with him, and one of the things that he was saying is he's like, God, for whatever reason, gave me the ability to learn how to play guitar to this ability that I've had. He's like, so why would I stifle that and kind of take that away? But he's like, it's not to show off for me. It's to show off, hey, this is what God gave me. This is to give Him glory. And I always found that interesting, especially in light of like a lot of the avoidance of, let's say, like a guitar solo or something like that. If done right, it seems like it could be done in a very God-honoring, positive way, I think.
Thank you for saying that, because I've had different people tell me, you know what, it's kind of showing off a little bit what you're doing. Well, I like to end Nothing But the Blood with an ending that's I'll go. You could do that, or you go, And when you do that, it's the people are into it, and but some churches want to hear of it. And if it's a real conservative Baptist church, or I'm playing somewhere where the guitars aren't really that favored, I might end it like that. I might play very soft, and every time you get on stage, you want to look at your crowd. You want to see what church you're playing at. Okay, these people would probably like the old hymns, and so you do the old hymns. And then they really like that. And then if you do that and you get their favor, then you can do some of your stuff, little picking. Maybe if it's a classical, then they'll accept that because it's classical, and then you're doing your riffs, And that's just what you have to do. If you just go by, this is what I'm doing, this is the key, and that's it, you're going to lose your crowd.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the cool things too about, let's say, like somebody like you that's able to, bring the hymns to churches, but bringing it on the guitar. I feel like that's a really important thing, especially for the younger generations, like my age and even younger, where a lot of people my age, they don't like the hymns, but a lot of it's because they're used to the very stuffy. You've got the choir and you've got the church organ and things like that, and for them, they're just like, okay, that's boring. That was my childhood, whatever it is. But then when you can bring it in a new way, it's almost like bringing like a new life to those really important words, I think.
Right. Absolutely. Well, right at first, somebody looks at you and you're wearing a cowboy hat and boots, and you're up there and it's, wait a minute, where's a suit? I'll wear a sport coat. I try to dress really nice. My wife makes me do that. But to get their attention, you might just go, an old hymn. Great is thy faithfulness, So a lot of them will say, hey, that's good, that are hymn lovers. And so you have to adjust to each crowd. It's not about what I play. It's not about me. It's about the people, that you're preparing the hearts for the pastor to preach to them. And you want to prepare their hearts by getting on their side. You may not do it by your looks, and when you walk out on the platform, people may write you off already or really like you. But I haven't had any trouble. People have been overly kind to me, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. And what are some of your favorite songs to play, like when you go to a church and either like you're leading worship or you're setting up for the sermon or whatever it is? What are some of your favorite songs that you like to bring to local churches?
It would probably be a song that you would maybe end with. So if the pastor's going to try to lead people to Christ or attempt to, it would be like this. I've been held by the Savior. I feel fire from above. I've been down to the river. I'm a prodigal return. All my hope is in Jesus. Thank God my yesterday's gone. All my sins are forgiven. I've been washed by the blood. Songs like that are talking about hope in Christ. And one more would be, my wife had a good idea for me to maybe put this online because of what's going on with this virus. Once a nation under God, willing to obey, guided and protected by your hand. Now we're like a wayward child, just wandered far from home. Won't you save this lost and dying land? Lord, give us America, we ask for her by name. Lord, give us America, light a fire, fan the flame. Send us out to harvest and the waves of grain. Lord, give us America in Jesus' holy name. Something like that. And, I'll probably do it the next church I play at.
Yeah.
This week, about a week and a half ago, I was at a church. It was a drive-in church. It had about 400 cars. And so when I was playing something and doing a guitar run, everybody was honking their horns. It was really, really interesting. And you're done, and boom, and they're all 400 cars. They're honking their horns,
Yeah.
So that was fun. So it never gets old.
Right. Now, like, like dealing with all this, like coronavirus, and it seems like, everybody's been really, kind of struggling, staying apart. And I feel like that's been one of those kind of cool things about having a lot of those like drive-in services where, even though we're still separated by like the cars and, things like that, it's still a chance for people to feel like they can come together and we're still like unified. And I feel like in like today's society in general, we're very individualistic and we're separated. There's a lot with social media. There's a lot with technology and just everybody's busy. But then again, it seems like something like music, whether it's a drive-in service or just whatever it is, it just seems like that's something that really makes people feel connected to other people, which I think is really cool as well.
It'd be neat to do a concert online. I don't know exactly how we'd do it, but you call us and we would do something like that. How many followers do you have?
I've got about we average about like 1,500 viewers per show.
Well, that's really good.
Yeah. So
we're looking forward to people can find us online, DennisAgajanian.org.
Mm-hmm.
And we have our phone number there. Our office is here.
Yeah.
And I answer it, or my wife answers it, and we go anywhere. So it'd be fun to visit some places we haven't been.
Yeah.
It's always a lot of fun, and so we've just pretty much postponed things till a later date. We haven't canceled, but it's just postponed.
Right. Now, where do you feel like has been like your favorite place to have played? Because I feel like everybody's always got like their specific like either venue or location or just like a memory of like this was like the best like experience playing. Like for you, what was that moment?
Well, it's been Decision America. My wife and I went to 50 state capitals, Brooklyn Graham, and played. And in 50 states, we did it in 1 year, in 2016. And then we're doing it this year too. We'll be in, it's called the Heartland Tour. We'll be in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Minnesota and New Hampshire and Ohio and Indiana. You come in, these 3 18-wheeler trucks come in, they set up the stage, you're in a park. We don't take offerings, and I'll get up and I'll perform a half an hour, and then Franklin Graham will come and speak, or we'll have myself perform, and then we'll have Jeremy Camp come up, and he'll play 20 minutes, or Michael W. Smith, and we've done them, and they've been a lot of fun because it's just a different place every time, and it's a real challenge. You're outside. The elements could be rain. It could be really hot, or it could be very, very cold. And you get 15,000 people coming, 10,000 people coming. It's really a neat thing. You get in the car and you're going to the next city and you're on your way. And I don't do the bus thing. And we just rent a Suburban and we go. The dog and my wife, myself, and so. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's really cool, and I feel like too is like it's one of those things like when you get the opportunity to either like play at one of those either like festivals or like an event like that where it's evangelistic, especially, it just seems like there's this like feeling and this sense, like I was saying earlier, of community, but also too is like there's like a common purpose. And I think that a lot of times, like even here, like in America right now, it seems like we're really lacking in that common purpose because like there's the political divides. There's it just seems like everybody's divided over everything, and I feel like we need more of those kind of unifying events. And that's what's a little disheartening, I feel like, for me, of dealing with like this coronavirus is it's pushing people apart that much more. So I think the more coming out of this, the more we can do to try to find ways of unifying, churches and the country and just in general. I mean, music is definitely one of those ways to do it.
Well, what you're doing is where are you out of? What city are you out of?
I'm out in Orange County, California.
You know what you're doing is so valuable because people are staying home and they want to tune you in. They want to listen. Greg Laurie had about 1,300,000, people when he knew that President Trump was going to be viewing in. He had close to 1,300,000 people in, and you're thinking, people they're searching, and they want to hear messages like you and messengers like you, and it offers them hope. And I think that in many ways, I told Greg, I said, you ought to keep one of your services just be live stream, and like in the front room, or do it on a Saturday or something, because people just enjoy that. They can't get to church. They don't live in Riverside or Orange County. So, the Lord will use it, for His glory, like He's doing with you, Jeff.
I appreciate that.
And that are live streaming. I think it's great.
Yeah. It's definitely a lot of fun. It's fun doing like this show too, because I feel like I'm always having like different people from all different kinds of walks of life, and just getting to like talk and have a conversation. And I feel like that's something that we kind of need a little bit more, and like I've had some politicians, some pastors, some like a couple of musicians, some actors, but it's always fun just to hear different perspectives and different stories, especially how God has kind of used all these people, and you kind of see this common theme of He's constantly redeeming people and kind of bringing them back to Him over the course of their life through their talents and abilities and knowledge and whatever it is. So for me, it's just been fun to just have these kinds of conversations, I think.
Oh, it's incredible! Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. Look at you playing to you.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to have you kind of close out with like another song or two, and just kind of like share some of your favorite tunes.
All right. Let's do Out of the Wilderness is a song that talks about the prodigal and prodigal son, Luke 15. Father, I'm young and I want to leave. Please don't worry, please don't grieve, I'll be okay. There's so many things that I want to do. That doesn't mean that I don't love you, don't make me stay. I just want to be free, to be what I want to be, out in the wilderness. Out in the wilderness, I'll be on my own. I can learn to fly, or explore in the unknown, and I'll find a way. Just let me go out in the wilderness. Hello, stranger, I lost my way. Do some work if you let me stay for a little while. All I need is some food to eat, a place to rest my weary feet for a little while. Sure, I could feed the sows. You don't have to show me how. Out in the wilderness. Out in the wilderness, I'll be on my own. I can learn to fly, or explore in the unknown, and I'll find a way. Just let me go out in the wilderness. Father, I'm home and I want to stay. I should never have gone away, Lord, I was wrong. You don't have to call me son. Who can forgive the sins I've done? I don't belong. I'll be a servant now. I'll learn how to feed the sows out of the wilderness. Out of the wilderness, I was on my own. When I tried to fly, I got lost in the unknown, and I found a way. And I want to stay out of the wilderness. Out of the wilderness. Father, I'm home and I want to stay. I should never have gone away, Lord, I was wrong.
Very cool, very cool. Well, hey, Dennis, I really enjoy this. I really enjoyed having you on, and I'm really glad that we could do this. I was really looking forward to having you on. I always love hearing you play and sing and all that kind of stuff. But I really appreciate you joining me here for this podcast.
Well, let's touch base, and I want to take you to dinner sometime. I'm down in Orange County playing.
That would be.
We'll have to touch base.
That would be great.
It'd be a lot.
Yeah, definitely let me know whenever you're in town. That would be definitely great to do that. So, so again, like if people want to be following you, keeping up on like where you're playing and things like that, what's the best way for them to keep up on all that?
DennisAgajanian.org, and Agajanian is AGA and then JANIAN. Agajan, JANIAN.
Perfect.
DennisAgajanian.org.
Definitely.
And we're willing to come out to their churches too if they want. And if I'm on my way somewhere, if I'm on tour, we could work it out where we drop by and play there, be in their service or do a concert or whatever. I also speak a lot, so we could do, all three of them. So.
Right. So yeah, well, again, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. Had a blast, and yeah, we'll definitely have to do that again sometime and meet up sometime. That would be great.
Take care, friend. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you. And then for everybody else as well, let's see. Tomorrow we'll be back for another episode of America Held Hostage, bringing to you guys the daily news. And then I've got another episode of Conversations with Jeff tomorrow with Annie Cyrus and talking about her experience coming out of being raised in Islam and just her experience coming out of that. So that'll be a great episode as well. So check that out, and we will be back here tomorrow. Thanks so much.